Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence both starring in what is essentially Blue Lagoon meets WALL-E. I'm in! Hey guys, the Black Critic Guy, and I'm here today to review the film Passengers. So Passengers follows Jim Preston and Aurora Lane, two passengers on the spaceship Avalon en route on a 120-year journey from Earth to a planet called Homestead 2, who are unfortunately woken up 90 years too early and are unable to go back into cryosleep. From here, they form a romance as well as deal with an impending threat to the spaceship. Now, I, like many others, were really looking forward to seeing Passengers. I mean, it's a space romance starring arguably two of the biggest stars on the planet, Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence. That right there is enough to get people's butts in the seats. So I was really looking forward to seeing the film. Then I started hearing the early reviews for the film, and most of them were kind of negative towards the film. Some had very mixed feelings about it, so it made me kind of scared, like, what if this film is actually pretty bad? What if I'm actually going to hate it and Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence can't save this film? What if they have no chemistry on screen? Oh my god. I started doubting whether or not I wanted to see the film or whether or not the film was going to be good. But I ignored everything that I heard and went into this film with an open mind, and I have to say, I actually really like this film. Right off the bat, the visuals are excellent. The spaceship looks and feels futuristic, and space is as mesmerizing as always. The score of this film is also pretty good, and coincidentally, it was made by Thomas Newman, who also did the score for WALL-E. The parallels are strong with this one. Now, it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone when I say that I'm a huge sucker for romance. And as a sucker for romance, I quite enjoyed the story in this film. It's well paced, I was fully engrossed in it, the writing is solid, and by the way, the guy who wrote this film was also a co-writer on Doctor Strange and is writing the upcoming Mummy film, which I thought was an interesting tidbit. And there were actually quite a few intense moments in the story that actually had me on the edge of my seat, worrying whether or not the characters would survive the situation. I think the one part in the story that I found the most interesting on a dramatic level is that there comes a point where a character has to make a really hard moral decision, and this character is battling between themselves as to whether or not to do this one action, and then later has to deal with the ramifications of committing said action. I thought that was so well done, and I totally empathize with the character's choice, why they decide to do it. It doesn't make them a good person, but I understand why they did it. And if I was in the same situation as this character, I probably would have done the same thing. And the performances were great, especially Chris Pratt's, who truly surprised me with his dramatic turn in this film. Yeah, sure, he still plays up the typical charming, charismatic, and witty leading man role that he's known for, but his character is a bit more of a challenge for Pratt, as he's supposed to portray a character with a bit more depth and complexity, and he pulls it off in flying colors. I absolutely loved and related with his character. Not to shoot down Jennifer Lawrence now, she isn't half bad herself. She plays her character to the best of her abilities, and she knocked it out of the park in all of the emotional scenes that she's in. And both of these characters, Jim and Aurora, were likable and had a convincing relationship. I actually felt chemistry between them. If there was one thing, absolutely one thing that I feared from this film, is that their relationship would come off as forced and manufactured, and I wouldn't feel a connection between them. But no, they pulled it off in flying colors, and I was totally sold to their relationship. It was cute, it was touching, it did have some rough patches here and there, but I really liked their relationship. I rooted for it. But unfortunately, now I must address the meteor in the room and talk about all the issues I had with Passengers. I think people's biggest problem with this film is that if you were to strip away all of the sci-fi elements, which aren't really all that prevalent in the film, it's a pretty by-the-numbers romance story. I mean, it follows that formula of boy meets girl, girl meets boy, they form a romance, but then they have a falling out somewhere in the middle, but they come back together in the end and they live happily ever after. It follows that same old song and dance. And because the film is so formulaic, it becomes quite predictable. You already know what's going to happen minutes before it actually happens, removing any sort of tension or suspense as to what is coming next. Now, I myself did not see much of a problem to this. I will say I was irritated by a few of the cliches and conveniences and cop-outs, but for most of it, I was like, I'm okay with this. But I can understand people's reasoning as to why they don't like seeing this cliche, especially when you have arguably two of the biggest stars in the world in a movie together. You want this film to be something worthwhile, something memorable, something spectacular, not what turns out just to be a romance story in space. Basically, to sum up my entire point, the film just felt way too safe, especially with all the talent that was involved in it. As I mentioned a few seconds ago, there were quite a few cop-outs in the film that made me groan in disapproval. I couldn't believe that they resorted to these cop-outs. It would have been far more interesting had they not done these cop-outs. It would have added more to the characters, to the story, but nope. Because it is a typical romance story, it has to kind of end in this fashion, and I was like, oh, come on. And speaking of things that left me dumbfounded, there was this thing that happens in the film that made me say, really? Movie? Are we really doing that here in Passengers? Like, seriously? Wow. Freaking wow, movie. I can't believe it. I really can't believe it. I don't know whether you did that on purpose or it was completely accidental. It was just an oversight and nobody noticed it. But, I mean, come on. Come on, movie. And I don't want to say what exactly it is, as it would be a major spoiler for the film. But let's just say that it is a cliche that is found very prevalently in the horror genre. But other than that, guys, overall, I got a kick out of Passengers. Again, I love romance stories, and if a romance story is done right, I'm gonna really enjoy it. And Passengers is a romance story done right. Yes, it's cliche, yes, it's formulaic, but again, it's something that didn't really bother me, as I was still fully invested in the story and the characters. And that's why I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I think that it is worth watching. But as always, guys, I'm not the end-all be-all opinion when it comes to Passengers. I would love to know what you guys thought about the film as well. Did you absolutely adore it? Is it your favorite film of the year? Did you like Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence's romance? Or did you find it really boring, formulaic, cliche, and you weren't fully invested in the film? And let me know, what is your favorite romance in space? Comment below, let me know. More videos are on their way, including some anime reviews, and of course, the top 10 list for the end of the year. So stay tuned for all of those, and as always, if you'd like to support the Black Critic Guy just a smidge more, why not donate to my Patreon account? Link is in the description, and if you'd like to send me any fan letters, send it to this address right here. And as always, guys, if you would like to be a part of the Black Critic crew, not miss out on a single awesome video, please hit that subscribe button below, like this video if you really enjoyed it, and I'm Tony Watt II, the Star Man, known as Black Critic Guy. Till then, peace, YouTube.
Yes.